Hello there, welcome to another edition of Matt's Chats. This is a series of videos where we talk to people in and around the whisky industry and try and get a little bit deeper and find out more information for you. And I'm delighted to be here at the White Peak Distillery in Derbyshire and with co-founder Max Vaughan. And thanks for showing me around today.
You're welcome, Matt.
And
great to have you
also, for inviting me. But for those people that don't know about White Peak and what you do here, can you just explain a little bit about what's happening and what you're making here?
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for coming to visit, Matt. It's been great to show you around what we've been doing.
It's been a great day.
So we started the distillery, Claire, my wife, and I, in late 2016. Took us about a year to sort of salvage the buildings we're in and establish a distillery. And we've been making whiskey since early 2018. We principally make single malt whiskey, and our core house style is lightly peated. And that light peating was really about some flavour and background complexity, as opposed to wanting to be identified as making peated whiskey.
That's quite unusual for English whiskey, isn't it? There's not many doing what you're doing.
I think that's right, and certainly when we took that decision early on, and when we were doing our research, that was part of the reason for sort of zeroing in on that style and that flavour. It was driven by wanting to make good quality, authentic whiskey. But also, when we looked around us, we didn't see anyone else that had plans to be making a lightly peated spirit. And you never know what the marketplace is going to be like in the future, but it seemed to be a point of differentiation for us.
And you released your first whiskey about a year ago, didn't you?
Yeah, almost exactly a year ago.
And how's it been going? How's it been selling well?
Yeah, it's been. I think if we kind of set out our plans for 2022, things really probably couldn't have gone any better in many ways. I think the feedback we've had on the spirits has been great. It's been really sort of nice for the whole team to just hear what other people think about what we've been making for the last 5 years. Because for certainly the first 4 of those 5 years, whilst we had a good sense of confidence in the spirit we were making, you kind of never really know until the product gets out there. So 2022 was a great year for us. We put out 8 releases. Most of them were relatively small, limited editions, in part trying to showcase the spirit in different casks and get a sense of what people think about some of the things that we've laid down, and in part to try and build up some ideas to the future about what we might do more of, for example.
Yeah, and English whiskey is such a growing category. There's so much interest in it now. As I said a little bit earlier, if we'd said 15 years ago when I started getting interested in whiskey that there's nearly 40 distilleries making whiskey in England now, people probably would have thought I was mad.
Yeah.
But how can you just briefly tell us sort of how do you go about setting up a whiskey? I'm guessing it's quite an expensive business, but how did you find this great location, and how did you go about getting the equipment and sort of running your spirit to how you wanted it?
Yeah, so this could be a long answer.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, so neither Claire or I were from a drinks or spirits background. I was a sort of lifelong whiskey fan. And I got a sense of what we wanted to make here in terms of headlines, but essentially we had to find out a lot of information, and I think the best way of doing that is by talking to people, and you'll often get a recommendation that you should go and speak to this particular person. You have a conversation, tell them about what you've got planned, perhaps what the specifics are of the information.
And they point you in a certain direction.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get 3 other references. And I guess the secret in many walks of life is there's lots of great advice out there. We found people in the whisky industry to be really generous. but then you kind of got to filter it for what you think is relevant for what you want to do. So a lot of that process sort of happened. It wasn't overnight. It was over a 3 or 4 year period, whilst we still had our previous day jobs. And then we just got to the point where we thought, well, we've got all this information. We've been kind of carrying this dream for a few years now. We just need to get on with it. And
otherwise, you may never do it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that certainly I think for Claire and I, we were conscious that you could carry on kind of kicking this idea down the road and finessing various plans. It'll never be perfect. The timing will never be perfect. But we kind of felt that sense that we didn't want to get to 70 years old and look back and wish we'd given it a go. So at some point, you need to get on with it. And then we had to bring on 2 or 3 people in the early days to just help us, formulate our kind of core whiskey style. And then at the same time, we're looking to find a home. And we had kind of 3 basic criteria. We wanted to be by a river. And that was just a kind of romantic sense of where you should find a distillery.
And we're right by the river here. It's literally out that doorway, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it couldn't be closer, which is a kind of an uninsurable risk for the business, but we manage it pretty well. But yeah, by a river in Derbyshire, which is where Claire and I are from, and then ideally we wanted a building that had some previous life, some personality, a bit of backstory, and that eventually brought us here to the Wireworks, which is in a World Heritage Site and operated for 120 years as a very successful business exporting around the world, and sadly closed 20 years ago, but we've we feel like we've breathed a bit of life back into this kind of area of heritage.
Yeah, and I like the sort of link with that, because you actually call your whiskies, rather than White Peak, you call it Wireworks. So we've got the bottle here of the latest release, which is the Double Oak Port, and lovely bottle, which alludes to the heritage of the wire and cable making sort of place that was here. And so this literally came out last week, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, that particular release is our most recent release, and it's another sort of slight departure from what we've done in the past. So we've called it Double Oak Port rather than it being a sort of port finish, because it actually spent more time in port than it did in ex-bourbon, where it started life. So we don't release age statements, but broadly speaking, the spirit spent a couple of years in bourbon, and then I think it's over 2.5 years in port casks.
Right. I think we should have a little taste.
Yeah,
you can just give us some basic tasting notes. That'd be good. Cheers.
So it's a 1300 bottle release. It's 52.2% ABV. So it's it's a pretty full strength. It's not cask strength. It'll take some water, but I think it drinks really well at this ABV, and that's what we've done with most of our releases, is think about the ABV that we believe internally puts our best foot forward. Lightly peated spirit, as I mentioned.
I've always liked peat and port. You have some nice sort of Islay releases or something like that, but it smells delicious. Quite floral, actually. Really fruity. Isn't it?
So that fruit style very much to the fore of our mind in terms of the new make that we're making. So long fermentation and the distillation cut points, all trying to encourage that those fruity notes, kind of orchard fruits, dry fruits. I think with this port cask maturation, they've almost taken on a bit more of a sort of sweeter cherry kind of fruity taste. And there's
absolutely
almost
delicious.
I mean it's
well
and it's
done.
I think
it's
it's
really
it is quite different from the other releases we've done, but things like there's kind of almost like cherry, marzipan, maybe a little bit of toffee apple, definitely those kind of fruity notes with a little bit of that kind of a bit more kind of tannin, leathery sort of port type influence. But yeah,
I'm guessing 1,300 bottles isn't going to last very long.
Yeah,
so.
I think as we stand here today, we've got around about 150 bottles left.
Oh right, so hurry up if you like the sound of that. Where can people buy it from? Is it
there are still a few bottles left on our website. We tend to sort of release it online in batches. One of the issues we had in the early days with some of our early releases is it sold out very quickly online, and we then also didn't have enough left in the distillery shop. And there's a kind of a balancing act there, because obviously we'd like people to be able to buy our whiskey from wherever they are, but equally when you come to the distillery shop, we'd like there to be some on the shelves. Yeah. So, but yeah, we've got a few bottles left online or here at the distillery in Ambergate.
Well, it's so delicious. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this quick chat with me, and thanks again for the invite. Cheers, Max.
Yeah, cheers, Matt.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.